Hey everyone, Monarch here, and well, looks like this video has been through hell. Figuratively and literally, of course. Hades has been a long-term game of mine for over 2 years at this point, first making itself known to me on March 10th of 2021, after it was finally freed from the grasp of Epic Game Store exclusivity, releasing on other platforms such as the Nintendo Switch. Since then, it has remained a backlog game for me to return to whenever I have bursts of interest, especially after the announcement of Hades 2 at last year's Game Awards. This news brought out the biggest burst I had for the game yet, and soon enough I was running through Hades several more times, writing up notes for the very video you are watching. And things would have gone smoothly if I didn't have a period of time where I believed my Nintendo Switch had gone and destroyed itself. Luckily, that nightmare is all over and done with, and I am at long last ready to unveil to you all a brand new countdown. The underworld is an incredibly perilous place with its many layers, hiding all sorts of horrifying traps and enemies in its darkest corners. And while you might be able to get through just fine with your starting sword, it never hurts to swap things up from time to time. The Infernal arms are the umbrella term for this game's group of weapons, each one offering up a radically different playstyle to go through Hades with. You have, of course, the perfectly balanced Blade of Stygius from the start, but then as you start going through the game, gain more Chaotic keys, you unlock some of the crazier options available to you like Aegis the Shield of Chaos, Malphon the Twin Fists, and even a damn gun in the form of Exegriff the Adamant Rail. And by harnessing Titan blood into these ancient weapons, you can have them change shape to take on the properties of the mythic figures who use them, past or present. With so many weapons, variations, and builds to consider, the age-old question that poets like Sophocles would ponder rears its serpentine head. Which one is the best? That is what I am here for. To give out my amateur ranking on each Infernal arm, worst to best. Now of course, before moving forward into the scholarly debate, let's lay down some ground rules. First, I'm gonna have to make the distinction that what I just said is a lie. Because despite what some people might have you believe, there is no definitive worst Infernal arm. They might crunch numbers and show off build strength to prove their point, but at the end of the day, every weapon is usable. The subject matter here today is what I consider to merely be a scale of favoritism. The title and subject is just worded like that so it might grab more attention. Above all else, the main factors I will consider for these weapons are how fun they are to use, their playstyle, ease of building, and also perhaps any feelings of power it might give. If you've got a keen eye, and assuming I don't just outright say it, you might get a good guess on what some of my choices will be. The second and final rule I will instate is that I will be consolidating all variations and possible builds as best I can into my placement. Counting each of the 4 variations the arms possess as their own separate entries would just take too much time. And really, there's no point to when they just simply augment or change certain features of the core weapon. And while I know people have already created flowcharts and guides on the best god pairings and way to build these arms, I will mainly be considering my own personal experience in their construction. With all that out of the way, and because this intro has gone on for far too long, let's roll right into the countdown. Bring your favorite keepsake, summonable pet, and aspect of darkness along for the ride. For these are my rankings from worst to best on every Infernal arm. The unfortunate reality about a list like this is the inevitability that someone, somewhere, is going to get mad. When you have a game this strongly designed where there is no single bad weapon, and then set yourself up for a list counting down each of them, you just kind of have to take the L. Viewers are potentially going to get upset seeing their favorite weapon being placed lower than they believe it should be, or potentially seen me play badly, while I am the one that has to split hairs over these decisions and deal with the aftermath. So, what were the decisive roots that made up my bottommost choice? As always, feel free to let me know your favorite weapon down in the comment section below. But if I have to consider my various nitpicks, then I would have to choose Aegis, the Shield of Chaos. Standing proud among all of Zagreus' arsenal as the certified weirdo, Aegis is the only weapon in the entire game to not involve cutting or shooting, but rather blunt force trauma. All of Aegis' basic blows have the effect of pushing lighter enemies backwards in the direction you hit, interrupting their animations. While this effect might seem weird and useless, it does serve a purpose, and a pretty potent one. For if the enemy collides against a wall, solid object, or even another in the environment, they will receive extra collision damage based on several factors like environment, momentum, distance from the walls, as well as any other boons you might have on you. This single effect makes Poseidon boons a great damage choice for the shield, as many of his blessings provide a damage bonus to enemies who have been wall splatted, even if they are bosses who are immune to being pushed back. In addition to all of that, Aegis has perhaps one of the best utility moves in the entire game with its charge attack, the Bull Rush. With enough charge time, you can hunker behind your shield and block almost anything coming your way. Anything! Projectiles, slashes, AoEs, you name it! So long as it doesn't extend behind your shield, you're good! And when you are done with hunkering down, you can charge forward in any direction to close the gap. Combine with a Captain America shield throw to give some outer stragglers hell, and you have a very interesting moveset that gets further expanded upon with each aspect. Taking the form of its original owner, the Chaos aspect amplifies the disc throw to create multiple copies after a shield charge, with each upgrade level increasing the amount of discs thrown. Meanwhile, with the form used by Zeus, the disc throw becomes this weird, hovering zone of damage that slowly moves forward. While the disc is out, it will periodically deal damage to any enemy near it, all while Zagreus can magically manifest a second shield to pummel foes with, creating an almost rushdown variation of the weapon thanks to its pressure. You could perhaps even stack some status-based boons onto the shield like Ares, Dionysus, or Demeter. The third hidden aspect is where things get interesting for a weapon, however, as these aspects greatly alter the gameplay style of the base weapon, and take the form of a future wielder. In this case, Aegis changes shape to befit the mythic Beowulf, trading in the fast basic hits for a slow, chunky blow with some end lag, a slower boomerang throw, and most importantly, an upgraded Bull Rush that can be powered up through Zagreus' cast. Multiple casts can be inserted at a time, and will remain loaded in until a Bull Rush is done, at which point an explosion of energy will occur at the end point of movement. Some other aspects also change to a cast-based playstyle, but none are more drastic than Beowulf. And with the right setup, you become a one-man army capable of demolishing boss life bars into nothingness. So if I have all of this good to say about the weapon, why is it at the bottom of the list? A few reasons. For one, the momentum and physics on Aegis' basic hit and Bull Rush are weird to me. Unlike other weapons, when moving forward and hitting an enemy, you aren't exactly running around and more like sliding. You can't move all that quickly in this state, can only turn or keep going in that direction, and have to dodge out of it if you want to move faster. The Bull Rush also has a hard limit on what it can travel across, being unable to go over gaps in the arena. And if you aren't careful with your direction or charge level, you can easily fling yourself into an undesirable location. This especially becomes a problem with the aspects that have a focus around the rush, namely Chaos and Beowulf, the latter of which forcing you to recollect your casts and try again if you just so happen to overshoot or miss. I also find the decision to focus an important aspect of a slower hitting, slide movement based weapon on wall splats to be a little odd considering the momentum of it essentially forcing you to chase down the enemies to get them into a wall. Like, yeah, I get this weapon is built for it and is probably the best in that aspect, but I could get the same result on any other weapon or build thanks to Poseidon. This becomes a more prominent issue depending on the enemies in the arena you fight in, with 2 of the 4 sections in Hades providing good, if not fantastic potential for a feature, and the other 2 being wide open spaces with gaps that make getting those wall splats difficult. Especially if your name is Asphodel. We don't talk about Asphodel. Last but not least, if it ain't already obvious, I just don't like the way it plays. If I am to play a slower paced weapon, then my expectation is to receive equal compensation for the movement I lost through something like damage. And while the shield, as with any other weapon, can have that in spades, I just find the quirks and holes in the plan to be too off-putting for me. As I said before though, there is no bad weapon in Hades. And even with my qualms, I have had some fantastic runs with the weapon. Seeing a quad-cast loaded Beowulf Bull Rush annihilate a fifth of Hades' life bar is a feeling few others can match.
That's all the heads. Good.
When crafting a video based on opinions, one of the most interesting things you can do is search around the internet and look at what the community has to say about a topic. It is incredibly fascinating to see how much you either line up with the community's sentiment, or stray further from it than a child with their family at an amusement park. So let me just say I am extremely surprised that a good portion of the community fucking hate Exegriff the Adamant Rail. And to be fair, I can see why. Of all the Infernal arms available in the game, Exegriff is bar none the most technical, demanding much more out of the player even at base than any other. Like the bow Coronacht, Exegriff is a weapon that specializes in taking care of enemies while staying as far away as possible. Unlike Coronacht, however, Exegriff spices things up with its primary gameplay mechanic, ammo. Whether pressing or holding the attack button, you will use up the ammo located in the bottom left next to your cast, and until it is reloaded, you will not be able to attack. This one feature adds a layer of multitasking on top of everything else the player is doing, requiring them to maintain spacing, projectiles, damage, and now ammo altogether, which not everyone is up for. The other attack you have with Exegriff, though, is much more fun to play around with, a cluster bomb that you can aim anywhere in the arena. Through these design features, Exegriff presents itself as a weapon that is easy to pick up, but hard to master thanks to its ammo mechanic and unfortunate low damage scaling. The returns, though, are definitely worth it if you can manage to get it going with a good build, shitting out damage left and right thanks to its fast firing rate, as well as the ability to dodge while shooting. And just as unique as the base form are the free variations. Eris places a larger emphasis on the special, encouraging Zagreus to go for upgrades related to it by giving a 15% damage bonus at level 1 for 4 seconds if he is within its radius. Hestia increases the management skill of the weapon by adding an incentive to manually reloading, giving a flat plus 50 damage bonus to the next shot. Personally, I don't believe a damage bonus that only applies for one attack is all that helpful, but I do know that people have found some crazy output potential from this aspect by reload shot cancelling. I just don't have the skill or patience to do so. And then there is by far the most bizarre aspect, the aspect of Lucifer. Yes, you heard that right, that Lucifer. Lucifer keeps the management of Exegriff, but in a different lens through a couple of changes. For one, the basic fire has been changed into a fucking beam cannon that deals continuous damage as long as it is held down, and still has ammo left, of course. And second, the special now being changed to Hellfire Bombardment, planting an orb of energy at a location you choose, just like with the regular version. Unlike the default though, it will not detonate automatically, instead choosing to sit there periodically, dealing damage to enemies around it until an attack either by you or an enemy triggers it. Up to 3 can be planted on the field at any time, with some special Daedalus buffs increasing attributes of it, like allowing Zagreus to barrage fire all 3 at once. And honestly, that's where my main complaint of Exegryph comes into play. So much of the weapon and its aspects are just kind of trash at the start, and more than any other suffers from not having the right buffs to help it along. Status afflicting boons can be useful due to its fast fire rate all around, but requires other tools that modify or clear the status to truly get the damage the default fire needs. Without the proper build, damage output can feel like trash considering the amount of lead you are pumping into the enemy, leading to the weapon feeling weak. This goes doubly so for Lucifer, which, while I like the concept of, is by far the most clunky hidden aspect to utilize properly. The Hellfire launch is so damn slow, making it a nightmare to line up multiple on the field without getting hit, and they are ridiculously small in the area of effect they inhabit. Trying to trigger the Hellfire mines can be torturous depending on the enemies around you in the orb, resulting in occasions where they can straight up body block you, preventing the mine from going off also due to the beam's auto-aim. The beam itself is a small, linear line that has all the problems already stated about the basic fire, on top of an incapability to deal with multiple enemies at once, as well as a ramp-up gimmick that increases damage the longer you hold the button, creating a massive target over your head to be punished. With any number of Daedalus upgrades, ranging from rapid firing the Hellfire shots, making their AoE bigger, a freeway trident beam, and faster ramp-up bonus, the weapon becomes so much better to use. And I kind of hate it for that. For those who stick with it though, and have a dash of luck, Exegryph becomes one of, if not the best weapon in the game for speedrunning. I just wish the highs of this weapon were a little closer to the ground, honestly.
Hope she won't be back anytime soon.
The first clear in any roguelike represents a monumental shift in the player and their skill. Up till that point, they spend hours practicing small, minute factors in a run. They die over and over, whether it be to traps, minor enemies, or important bosses, learning rooms, enemy comps, movements within the game, and more. Finally vanquishing that last opponent means that they are at long last ready for more experimental runs, more variety, more builds, and more challenge. And while I can't speak for everyone, I am confident in saying that a good portion of Hades' newcomers probably had their first run clear courtesy of Coronacht, the Heart-Seeking Bow. An early unlock option, Coronacht is the second of 2 ranged weapons in the game along with Exegryph, preferring to hold up in the mid-range of the arena. Pressing or holding the standard attack button will cause a single arrow to be shot in the direction of Zagreus' choosing, while the special will send forth a multitude of arrows in a forward arc. The defining feature that sets up Coronacht as a skill-based weapon, however, would be the power shot. Holding down the attack button for long enough will cause Zagreus to flash white for a brief moment, allowing the arrow to achieve its maximum damage if the player lets go right at that moment. Let go of the button any sooner or later, and the power shots will not happen. This single gimmick forces the player to be more considerate on the flow of combat, keeping track of everything going on around them while not losing sight of Zagreus, which, as you can probably assume, is a lot harder to pull off than it may seem. Spicing up the admittedly basic gameplay are the special aspects. Zagreus, like all the others, is the starter kit of the weapon, granting a plus 3% critical strike chance, but otherwise not doing much. Chiron focuses on the special, creating a marker on the opponents once a basic attack hits them, attracting all arrows created by the special. Hera is another one of those cast-based builds I mentioned earlier with Beowulf, allowing Zagreus to slot in as many casts as he has, firing alongside the next basic shot, and also decreasing the time it takes for cast ammo to drop from enemies. The final aspect, Rama, is incredibly interesting, still keeping the basic flow of Coronach intact, but swapping out the arrow for a big-ass wave, and bringing along the shared suffering ability. Enemies hit by the ricocheting special arrows will have the marker placed upon them, causing them to receive a portion of the damage taken by other marked enemies for 7 seconds. Applied to multiple enemies within the room, and with a high enough damage output, Rama can easily clear hordes of enemies without you even having to bother. Not to mention, depending on certain Daedalus hammer buffs, you can end up playing different roles outside of a mid-range archetype, with sniper shots, close-range shotgun blasts, twin shots, explosive shots, bounce shots, piercing arrows, and more. With all this being said, I'm gonna have to make an admittance that compared to other weapons, the bow isn't exactly the most interesting. You get exactly what you see on the tin, and not much beyond that, even with the different aspects. Coronach has the potential to be by far the safest weapon in the whole game thanks to its range, and for certain people, that can shake them off of the gameplay if they are looking for something a little spicier. What also sours Coronach's score, admittedly, is the perfect shot system. Much of Coronach's damage relies heavily on perfect shots, and if you aren't able to land them consistently, then the damage honestly falters. There are certainly ways to bypass the system through the Daedalus hammer, such as making the perfect shot easier to land, but like all other possibilities, it is not guaranteed in every run. Still though, if you can get the timing down with or without those buffs, then Coronach can become an actual menace, rewarding you with sticking through the basic kit. Before they know it, all the undead caught in your crosshairs are already doomed to be obliterated.
You're slouching.
How could you? That'll teach him.
One of the most interesting elements to a video like this is the idea of time and change, and how something we might be favorable towards at one moment could suddenly suffer a sharp decline in favoritism the next, and vice versa. Multiple times in the past has this happened to me, and when you are in a game where every run is quite literally different, the chance for that change to take place is much greater. Every possible high and low a weapon could have is possible within the realms of Hades. And I have a feeling that if beginner me saw that the Rafa, the Eternal Spear, wouldn't be number 1, he probably would have called blasphemy on my ass. In all fairness, it's not as if the drop down to 3rd place means all that much for Varafa. If anything, there have been some elements about the weapon and its various aspects I have discovered since first playing that makes this weapon even stronger in my mind. It's just that I have also spent a lot more time with other weapons and prefer 2 more over it. While we are here though, I might as well ramble about how awesome Varafa the Eternal Spear is, now that we've officially broken into the upper half of the list. Making up the middle ground of weapons as a melee fighter with the longest range out of all of them, the Eternal Spear is a force to be reckoned with in the proper hands. With fast, devastating pokes, it outranges any normal enemy within its reach, allowing for great diversity in either raw damage, crit, or status builds. Should enemies be farther than the spear can normally reach, the special throw can deal with them no problem, albeit at the cost of being unable to attack normally until it gets recalled back to Zagreus. And should there perhaps be a mob of enemies swarming you from all directions, the spear also has you covered there with its massive sweep attack, dealing extra damage for every level of charge you get. Even at its base form with a special damage, range, and speed percent bonus, Varafa is more than enough to carry players in all manner of encounters, serving as an incredible one-man army tool, especially for newcomers. Just like all of her weapons, however, Varafa has several different flavors to vary up the experience. Taking up the favored spear of your mentor, the aspect of Achilles allows you to rush towards your thrown spear after a special, granting Zagreus an incredible plus 50% damage bonus for your next 4 attacks and casts at base, allowing the weapon to have massive potential in a rushdown playstyle. From one mentor to another, the aspect of Hades modifies the wide-ranging spin attack to punishing sweep, marking all enemies hit by it for 10 seconds to receive more damage from your attack and special. The spin attack range is also even bigger than before, giving Varafa greater capability to clear out crowds and potential stragglers lying in the corners of the room. Finally, we have one of the strangest hidden aspects in the game, the aspect of Guan Yu. On top of modifying the attack strain and special of the spear, the Frostfair blade offers an interesting trade by cutting down not only your maximum health, but also all healing and health pickups you get by up to 70% at base. In return, reducing incoming damage and allowing you to heal back lost HP via the spin attack. The spin sends out what I can only describe as a giant Beyblade, ricocheting off of any walls or objects in the arena, restoring 1 HP to Zagreus per hit. And just like Aegis the Shield of Chaos, these Beyblades can reach terrifying levels of room clearing in tight spaces, especially inside Tartarus and Styx. And with the size, speed, and amount of times or enemies it can hit, you could very easily build it for just about anything, from raw damage, crit, status, or even damage reduction. Something that very much helps Guan Yu a lot. The one downside I will say that is dragging Varafa to the halfway point of this list would actually have to be the spin attack itself. To get the maximum potential for the spin attack, you have to stand still for a few seconds to reach full charge, which depending on the arena and dangers you're facing, can be easier said than done. And when 2 of the 4 aspects have a focus on the spin attack as its main gimmick, the risk of taking damage is even more probable than if you were to just simply use the other 2. Also, I just don't like the rest of Guan Yu's moveset. The fixation on the spin, while rewarding, leaves the rest of the kit feeling kind of frustrating, considering how awkwardly it moves around and the speed of it, leaving it once again in that zone I have mentioned numerous times before in the list of requiring certain Daedalus hammer bonuses to make the spin attack much easier to pull off. Despite all of that, the standard moveset is incredibly fun to play around with, and every form of the weapon has some crazy shit in store. Hell, for all that I just gave Guan Yu right now, it can get work done! So much to the point of landing my second fastest clear time at one point, right next to Malphon the Twin Fists. With so many bases it can cover, it's no wonder why Varafa the Eternal Spear is many people's favorite infernal arm.
Blast. It seems I was no match for you this time. Again, you.
my father's name.
Sometimes the original choice can be the best choice. In the internet searches I mentioned prior with Exegriff, I saw a lot of lists or comments of people downplaying Stygius' strengths, often ranking the weapon at the bottom of the list. It seems like people are underwhelmed by the lack of drastic changes between aspects, or the simplicity of the weapon compared to other options. And while true, Stygius might not offer anything too special between all of its variations, what it does offer is enough to carry the weapon on its own. Which, if you have been paying attention to some of the common issues I have stated about other weapons, then you'll know that Stygius ranks this high for having none of that. No extraneous gimmicks you have to worry about changing up or perfecting to get optimal results. It's just you and a big ass sword. Anything else you throw on top is merely toppings on the cake. Slashes, pokes, smashes, you name it, Stygius does it. All on top of an ever-increasing attack and movement speed the more you cash into it. Through the other aspects, we see small, simple refinements to the moveset, generally all focusing on the Nova Smash in one way or another. Wielding the aspect of Nemesis, Zagreus will receive an increased critical strike chance for 3 seconds after a Nova Smash, granting the chance to dish out some ludicrous damage thanks to the speed at which the weapon attacks, as well as any extra boons on the side. With Poseidon, we get a weird subversion of the cast build I have mentioned previously, still increasing the percent damage of casts of course, but never loading them into a weapon. Instead, the Nova Smash acts as an instant refresh option for the cast, dealing an extra bit of damage when dislodged from the enemy. This ability makes a great pairing with Artemis's Exit Wounds boon, along with her cast-centric abilities like Fully Loaded. But the cherry on top of all of this that truly breaks the Stygian blade into second place is the hidden aspect of Arthur. Running antithetical to everything I said earlier about the movement of the weapon, the aspect of Arthur changes up the basic slash for a 2-hit, wide-ranging slash combo that must be held down to perform, and causes the Nova Smash to create an area of hallowed ground. Within this field, the already impressive plus 50 base life modifier the weapon gives is further bolstered by a damage reduction modifier of 20% so long as Zagreus stands within its radius. Not only that, but all traps that lie beneath the field will be disabled, preventing any accidental damage you would take by stepping on it. Combined with a movement speed decrease on enemy projectiles within the field, and a straight cancellation of the Exalted Soul's movement, and you have no need to move. Within this field, you become an unstoppable tank that eats bullets for breakfast, all while demolishing any enemy even remotely near a field, courtesy of the sword's incredible damage. And there are so many boons and possibilities to do with this aspect. From increasing the damage tanking potential of the weapon through Dionysus' Festive Fog, Positive Outlook, and High Tolerance, Aphrodite's weakening of enemies with Heartbreak Strike, Empty Inside, Sweet Surrender, Wave of Despair, and Unhealthy Fixation, Hermes' Greater Evasion, and Athena's Bronze Skin, Holy Shield, Divine Dash, and Aid. Or alternatively, cashing on the larger strikes of the basic swing with Athena to deflect projectiles, along with Artemis's critical strike chance to land some draconian amounts of damage in a single hit. It is by far my favorite hidden aspect of the game to play around with for this reason, and altogether summarizes the strength and flexibility of Stygius. Some people might call you bland and outclassed by the other weapons, but in my eyes, you focus on the aspects that truly matter to me.
I did it.
You already know what my number one is just by process of elimination. So go ahead, put up your dukes! The path of a champion is difficult. Starting out at the bottom of a hill, you are unsure of what you are doing and where you want to go. Time and again, you try and fail, constantly beset by perils waiting to bring you down. Inch by inch though, you climb higher and higher up the ladders into the championship, honing your craft. The higher you climb, the greater you fall, and at some point, you most certainly will fall. But the fall isn't what matters. It's about getting back up and trying once more, stronger than ever. Eventually, climbing to the very top of Mount Olympus, victorious. The heart of success is failure, and no other weapon represents this motto more than Malphon the Twin Fists. Trading in any semblance of safety or range, you dedicate yourself to a flurry of blows that are among the fastest in the whole game, getting right up into the enemy's face to deck them with a jab, hook, or maybe even an uppercut. 1 minute you are in their face giving them a mollywhopping, and the next you duck behind their guard, ready to deliver a devastating blow that would surely cripple them. Lightning, water, frost, poison, you name it, death will be dealt by your hands only. There are, however, other alternatives to the regiments. You could of course stick with the basics, betting all or nothing on the chance to dodge an incoming attack. Or you could take after the bronze humanoid Talos, giving opponents who camp in the edge of the ring the middle finger and pulling them back into your reach to continue the beating. Perhaps maybe the wrathful goddess of the harvest herself, Demeter, who encourages particular use of your special technique through continuous regular attacks, only capitalizing when the time is right for a truly devastating uppercut. Or maybe, just maybe, you abandon all forms of practice and technique, adopting the fine style of a wild bear in the visage of Gilgamesh to tear into your opponents. With speed and senses heightened, you dash furiously into the fray, never laying up the onslaught for a second. And when you truly want to go in for the kill, you hit the enemy with a risky strike that sends them into fight or flight, simultaneously lowering their guard with doom over the possibility of defeat and making them more aggressive and powerful, ready to cling to their afterlife with all they've got. Failure to succeed in the hunt results in even greater punishment, but the rewards are well worth it. Malphon might be lacking in damage at first, requiring a good boon in the attack slot to start dealing damage. It might not have the greatest crowd controlling abilities at base. It might put you into danger more often than not, getting yourself killed for a move you shouldn't have committed to. But it is exactly because of those drawbacks that I love this weapon. Because overcoming those hurdles, succeeding in a run despite it all, getting some of my fastest clears ever, and dealing some of the highest damage in the entire game makes it all worth it. I love the constant tug of war I play with my life, throwing myself dangerously close to the enemies for the sake of victory. I love the reaction time that is required to wield this weapon efficiently, knowing when to continue striking or back away and find a different vantage to attack from. And I love the risk of failure, the penalty you get for overcommitting and getting too greedy. It is the perfect embodiment of this game's systems and premise, and for that, it earns the top spot as my favorite Infernal arm in the entire game. I have been the Monarch of Dragons, and always remember, dear audience, that the path to success is a never-ending journey. Though I may show off all this information, I am but a humble novice with much to learn. There are so many more runs to clear, more builds to experiment with, and more challenges to test myself against. And when the time of Hades 2 rolls around, I greatly look forward to restarting my journey. Hey everyone, Monarch here, and thank you all so much for watching this video. Doubly so if you are here for the live premiere. It is currently 3:19 in the morning as I am recording this. I am all done with editing the video. I have everything in it that I need. I've done my final look over, and I am about ready to render this video out. So this is, technically speaking, future Monarch talking, and holy shit, I cannot apologize enough how late this video is, and just me not having enough quote-unquote big videos this year. I know you all are probably used to it by this point, considering it's me we're talking about, but still, I have to apologize because, like the Blasphemous video, I intended to get this video out a lot sooner. Earlier in the year, in fact. I would have liked to get this out in the first quarter. But again, everything I explained in the intro, with the Switch supposedly breaking down and cutting off all forms of content involving that. Then there's the priorities of catching back up on Sunbreak and the title updates. When I found out that the Switch was working again, it was then working on Top 5 Wishes in Monster, it was doing Blasphemous 2 live streams. All that and more. And also my own lazy ass with procrastination. A lot of this is on me, but I'm just a slow person. I can procrastinate a lot, and at the end of the day, it is just me working on it. I'm the person who has to script, record, get the footage, edit, all of that. It's a lot for one person, and I try to take a leisurely pace with it, but it also means that sometimes I am very susceptible to being lazy and just procrastinating a lot. So I'm sorry with how long this video took to get out, but I hope that the end product was well worth the wait. This was definitely an interesting video for me to do, making another big video on a game that is not the usual for my channel, and also trying out a style here with like the visual information and using a lot of essentially masking in the video to cut out sections of a picture I have for like the weapon information. I hope this was all interesting and fun to listen to and watch, and that hopefully it does well, but knowing YouTube, it's a gamble. Which is why I am going to ask that if you did enjoy this video, to drop down a like, a comment, subscribe, anything to help out the channel, because every little bit of engagement helps on YouTube. Videos are driven and recommended by engagement, and when you're a channel as small as me, every bit quite literally helps in getting me out there and showing my content to more people. Not just in terms of money, but also as a passion project, because that's ultimately the reason I do YouTube and continuing this in the first place, outside of your guys' encouragement and all of that. So every little bit of support you could drop in the comments below, or just for the video in general, would be much appreciated. But, as always, I have been the Monarch of Dragons, and I hope you all have a fantastic day / night, wherever you live. Peace, and close vaults.